So I am a student, which means that I am permanently glued to this thing right here, my iPad. Now, I feel like students are notorious for raving about how much they love their iPad, how much they can do with that iPad, how much they couldn't live without that iPad. So I definitely use this a lot more now as I am a biomedicine student. So here is a tour of my iPad. So I thought I would quickly just show you guys the accessories that I actually have with my iPad. So I have a iPad pencil, which is actually a dupe for the Apple Pencil, as part of me just could not justify the price of an Apple Pencil back when I was buying one. So this one is from Amazon, so I will link it in the description if you guys want to get the same one. I've had it for 3 years and I've had like literally 0 issues with it, so it has never failed me. Trust me on that. Then I have this pink iPad case. Now I love this iPad case. It is a fold over one. I use this one specifically for when I'm doing note taking, when I'm watching things on YouTube. I use this one the most. It also has a little bit where I can put my pencil, but I do switch between this one and my blue one with the Bluetooth keyboard. Do also love that one as well, both from Amazon. So I will also link those two in the description if you guys want to get them for yourselves. So let's move on to the main part of this video, which is going to be the tour of my iPad. So here we have my lock screen. Now, love my lock screen. I have a couple of widgets on the side. So I have my calendar, which links to my Google Calendar. I use my Google Calendar pretty much for like every single thing, any event, anything that I'm doing in my life. It could literally be as small as doing my food shop. It goes on my Google Calendar. So obviously right now there's nothing on there. That's because it's summer and I don't use it as much in the summer. I mostly just use it during term time. Lectures, anything goes on there. Then I have a little widget for the weather. I live in the north of England, so it's very prone to raining. The weather is just up and down, so always very handy to know what the weather's going to be like. I then have a couple of smaller widgets, especially one that shows the battery, because always got to be charging this thing because I use it so much. Also, all of my wallpapers and my aesthetics widgets are from Pinterest, so if you want any of them, they will be on Pinterest for you to use for yourself. Then if we go into my actual main homepage, this is where I keep everything that is the things that I use the most. So on here we have more widgets. As I said before, I love widgets, love to use them for both aesthetics and also functionality. I feel like I love a mix of two. So on here I have some quotes. I have a little "'Tis the Damn Season" Taylor Swift quote, if you know what song that's from. I have a Marie Curie quote, just some like motivational quotes to help me motivate me study. I have some daily reminders, and then another thing for my battery. Then on my homepage, I typically keep the apps that I use the most. So I don't keep everything on my homepage. Anything that I don't use often just kind of stays in this like app library. But I have the generic apps such as camera, photos, Safari on my home screen just because I use them quite frequently. I then have my notes app. I always have things that I need to remember and need to write down just randomly in the middle of the day. So it's quite helpful just having that on my homepage so that I can just write things down really quickly and like just not have to think about it. So now I'm going to go through what I actually use my iPad for, because I have many uses for this iPad as a student. So the first thing I use this iPad for is note-taking. So note-taking on my iPad is not my primary form of note-taking. I actually mostly do my notes on my laptop. However, using my iPad is super helpful if I am wanting to annotate lecture slides, especially if the lecture is very full of diagrams. It's super helpful to be able to annotate this and also use this alongside my notes from my laptop. So using my pencil, it's super helpful to just annotate onto these lecture slides. I normally just go into the Files app and just edit them right there. The second thing I use my iPad for, and this is probably still the main use of this iPad, is Anki. Now, if you don't know what Anki is, Anki is a flashcard making app which basically lets you put your flashcards into decks and subdecks and you can group them together. Super helpful if you have a lot of modules with a lot of content like I do. So as you can see here, this is my Anki. Now I have grouped all of my year one modules together because obviously I finished first year now, so I don't really need to be looking at them as much. So I have grouped them by module, and inside each module I have the different weeks. I group them by weeks, so anything from week 1 goes into the week 1 folder, if that makes sense. So I have all my modules here for everything that I took in first year, and then I've grouped those together. The ones up top are my second year ones. Obviously I haven't started those yet, but those are my second year modules. I love having this on my iPad because it just means that I'm able to do it so much more efficiently, especially if I'm just somewhere where it's a little bit more convenient for me to get out my iPad. I can just get it out. It's touchscreen, so it means that it's super easy to use. And yeah, it's just a lot easier than sometimes dragging out my laptop, especially if I'm in a setting where I just really want to quickly get out my iPad, do a couple of Anki cards, and it also just keeps me off my phone because I do have Anki on my phone, which I only really use Anki on my phone if I'm like in the gym. That's like the only time that I really use Anki on my phone. So it just keeps me off my phone because it means that I'm not getting distracted while I'm studying. So as I said, that is still probably like my one primary use for this iPad, but obviously there's so many more, but this is probably the thing that takes up the most time on my iPad. So moving on, I have a couple of folders on my home screen, which is basically just apps that group together. So I have some apps that I use for uni, just kind of like your general generic apps. I then have some streaming service apps in case I am on a trip and I want to watch something super convenient, don't want to be taking my laptop on big trips because that's very heavy to carry around. So I will normally just take my iPad or my phone, to be honest. Either one is fine. And then I also have a little folder for my games. I don't have a lot of games on my iPad. I have Sudoku. I do a lot of Sudoku, so it's nice to have that on my iPad as well. But I do have a few games because I do still use my iPad for games. Only sometimes though. The next thing that I actually use this iPad for is Notion. Now, if you know me, you know how much I pride myself on my Notion. I love my Notion. And I actually use my Notion for a lot of things, for food planning, for journaling, but I do mostly use it for studying and just general study related things. So a couple of features that I actually have on here is an assignment tracker, which means that I'm just keeping on top of my assignments. It means that I'm aware of the dates and making sure that everything is due on time. And I also love to write down the lectures that I have had and make sure that I fully understand them, I've gone through them, I've done any extra reading where it's required. It's just really helpful to make sure that I'm on schedule, making sure I know when everything's due, just really making sure that I am organised with my studying. So I really love using Notion for that. But as I said, I do use Notion for things other than studying. So if you guys want a Notion tour, I can very much also do that because I love my Notion. So that is essentially most of the things that I use this iPad for. So I also want to show you guys how I actually do these widgets because I know it can be like super confusing figuring out how to actually make widgets and make cute aesthetic widgets. So I'm also going to be showing you guys how to do that on an iPad at the end of this video. So stick around for that. A few other things that I also use this iPad for, I just have like my other general apps in the app library, but that is the majority of the stuff that I use my iPad for. As I said, it's very much study focused. I feel like I don't use it that much for non-study things. Sometimes I will watch YouTube videos just to consolidate things that I've learned in lectures, but this iPad mostly gets used for studying, the occasional playing of games, but majority of it is for studying. So I'm now going to show you guys how I make these widgets, because I know a lot of you want to know how to get these really cute aesthetic widgets on your iPad as well. So let me show you. So you're going to go into the widget app, which most iPads should have, and then you can click on any size that you want. I'm just going to, for this purpose, do the small one. You can literally do anything, but again, for the purpose of this video, I'm just going to use the one for the calendar. So then on your homepage, you are going to add a widget in the top left. You can do this with any size, and when it appears, you will click which one you want.